Miami now has Tua Tagovailoa. They have Austin Jackson at tackle, and they have the Auburn corner, which is probably the safest way of describing that player they have. So with the three that they got out of the trio of first-round picks.
Oh, yeah, baby. Kristian's unbuttoned. And yes, the Auburn corner, we might talk about him. We might not. I still don't know how to say his last name. We've already been through this opening, but we had a technical glitch, so we're doing it again. And I'm not an actor, so I can't play along with it as well. Okay, that's what it is. I just talk football. Here we go. All right. So it was a cool opening, but I can't be wrong with it anymore. So that's just where it's at. All right.
Igbenogany, Chris. Igbenogany. I've got it.
Thank you. It is nice. Pete Dimalitaletis said it rhymes with mahogany, and that did help. So one of these days I'll have the guts to say that last name, but I'm not there yet. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Have everybody safe, healthy. It's Monday. It's the day or the Monday after the draft, 2 days after the draft. But we had a full weekend of football, and we're going to hit it all today. I mean, we're going to hit most of it. I know that. Favorite picks, position by position. We're going to hit on some of that. Along the way, we'll hit some news and notes that went on around the NFL. And then Paul and I both got our top 5 favorite drafts that we saw this weekend. There certainly was some good ones. I had about 9, 10, 11 teams that I wrote down that I thought were in the conversation for top 5 drafts. But either way, there's a lot to unpack here, man. And Paulie, how you doing, big guy?
Doing great. Fun weekend of watching the draft. It went very well with the gray and rainy weather that we normally have here in Connecticut. So it was nice to just watch the draft. Before we get into the picks, the way the draft was presented has been getting as much reaction, I feel like, as the actual selections a day or two after. What did you think of seeing all the GMs and coaches at their houses and just the way the whole thing was put together?
Pretty awesome. I mean, it really was. First off, for the GMs and coaches to be nice enough to open up their lives, right? And then also the family aspect of it, I thought was really nice too, to see coaches and GMs, kids in the room, and they want to get their chance to get on TV. So all of a sudden they're going to act like they're interested in what dad's doing, even though they haven't cared about him at that computer probably for the previous 4 weeks. But thought it was really well done by the NFL, by the networks, to get something out there to take all our minds off the reality of the situation right now. And it was fun. Other than maybe, listen, there was too many analysts at times where I wanted to go, damn, it's one player and we got 7 different highlight packages with 9 different guys explaining the guy. And I get that's the way it's got to work sometimes, but that's being nitpicky. All in all, I thought it was really well done and I enjoyed watching it.
Really enjoyable to see all the coaches and GMs around their families as they came in and out of the pictures. Took me back to a couple of the conversations I had with GMs to get ready for our conversations in the lead up to the draft. And they said, hey, whenever this normalcy comes back, my days of having my staff come to the office and be there till midnight, Monday through Friday, that's over. I've enjoyed being at home. I've been productive at home. And I think we got a little glimpse of that, a little sliver of that. All the family around there, I think the guys really enjoyed that the last couple of months, albeit for a very poor reason to be there. I think those kind of scenes are going to alter the way some of these guys conduct themselves around the office and what they require for people being around.
Yeah, well, they should. A lot of the way in the NFL right now, as you know, Paul, it's like old world thinking still. It's like, in 1974, they stayed in the building till midnight and then they went home. That was cool. But in 1974, they also had to take like 6 hours to cut up the tape and make a reel to show for it. So they were doing a lot of bullshit that didn't mean they were coaching and getting done the amount that people are getting done now. And, also we saw 2 teams in the Super Bowl where it's 2 head coaches who live the sport, but they're not like, puffing out their chest, like my buddy Kyle Shanahan, who's going like, I was at the office for 20 hours today. No. He does his work. He brings some of his work home with him. He lives it. So it's going to come up again at some point at home, but he doesn't need to be at the office for 21 hours a day. And I think you're right, Paul. I think it's a really good example, or it might change some people a little bit to relax that, culture of I just got to be the last man standing here in the office, and then maybe I'll get a better job because the coach will see me here so late.
I think improved family life around the league could be a positive splinter off of an otherwise negative situation these last couple of months. So
Yeah.
getting into the draft,
Yeah.
and as we got ready for it, Chris, as you pointed out, we hit every single position, one or two a week, and deep dives into each one of them. We thought a nice way to wrap it up here, or at least the first time we wrap it up here on this day, I want to have you pick your favorite selection from each position. I know that's not easy because you like a lot of the picks. And then after each one of your picks, I want to hit a couple of the themes as we veer off down the different ways that position group presented us in terms of stories as the draft played out. So we're going to start with wide receiver. 37 taken, Chris. Since the draft was reduced to 7 rounds, we've never seen more than 37 receivers taken in one single year. You got a lot to pick from. Which pick was your favorite?
Yeah, there's a lot to pick from. And just, full transparency, I tried to stay away in a lot of the cases from the top guys. Like, yeah, no crap. I like CD Lamb to the Dallas Cowboys. I liked Henry Ruggs to the Oakland Raiders, certainly. But I'm looking for a little bit of like guys that I thought were off the beaten path and didn't just get as much credit through the process as they thought, and maybe the value of where they're picked too. So the one that comes right off the bat to me is Pittsburgh with Chase Claypool. That in the second round, we both know we're huge fans of Chase Claypool. I think he's got a chance to be Vincent Jackson, Brandon Marshall, that type of talent. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have a keen eye for recruiting and figuring out value type wide receivers throughout, Kevin Colbert's history. So that to me is one that really jumps out. Probably my favorite one. For him to go, what was that? Pick 17 in the second round. I think right off the bat, he's going to be the number 2 receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers and really have a chance, I think, is talented enough to be that go-to guy and maybe even challenge a Juju Smith-Schuster to be the number 1 receiver for Big Ben.
And one of the major storylines, Chris, maybe the storyline coming into the draft when you broke it down into each position group, the wide receivers and how many might go in the first 3 rounds because of how deep the talent pool was. 17 went in the first 3. So I've got some team-oriented themes. I want to go down those roads with wide receivers. But because there were so many and because it was such a big story heading into the draft, is there another second or third round guy you want to point out before we move into some teams?
The first pick of the second round, I want to hit on T. Higgins. I thought that was a phenomenal pick by the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins, he's still young. He's raw. I think he's going to continue to grow and get stronger. I mean, if you look at him, and I mean this by no disrespect, he's got a little bit of a baby face on him. Again, we got to remember, these guys are 20 and 21 years old. You're not a full-grown man yet at that age, especially a lot of athletes who have been growing so much since like 7th and 8th grade on. They're really just starting to fill out now. But to me, it made a lot of sense. One, let's get a young guy with our young quarterback and start that bond right now, and you might be able to get a special connection. And then when you have A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon at running back, now you got like a nice mix of, I got this Plaxico Burress type receiver over here with my incredibly accurate quarterback who's amazing at throwing 50-50 balls or back shoulder balls to these type of players. I just thought not only was I a big fan of T. Higgins and what he is and what he can be, but I thought it fit well with the way Joe Burrow plays the quarterback position too, and it's something to build on. So I love that pick too.
One of the things I like about talking about the draft with you the last couple of years, you kind of see it like me. You're much more likely to be positive than negative. You want to see the glasses half full. And I feel the same way. I want to be excited about these picks and what these teams do. And I hear that in your voice as well. But we go back to Friday, and we both felt the same way about the Green Bay Packers selecting Jordan Love in the first round, quarterback to maybe someday take over for Aaron Rodgers, when they could have gone with running back, tight end, receiver to help him more, to help that team more right now. And we put a cap on that discussion by saying, let's back off for a moment and say a strength of this draft is how deep the wide receiver class is. Maybe we feel differently about what the Packers do come Monday. Maybe they give Aaron Rodgers some more weapons. And here we are. They still haven't taken a wide receiver.
No, it's Monday, and I feel worse about it because I went, damn, they had 2 extra days to get a receiver. They had 6 more rounds to do something. I'm bothered by their draft. I don't know. There's no other way to say that. really, listen, I like A.J. Dillon. He's another guy that you and I got to see in person
Yeah.
this year when Notre Dame played Boston College. Yes, is there some value to him? Certainly. But man, did the run game need to be addressed? I thought the run game was one of the positive things. Certainly could get better. I understand that. And you need a 1-2 punch. But I'm amazed that we didn't address wide receiver or pass catchers for Aaron Rodgers. Oh, don't worry, Aaron. You just keep carrying the team. No problem. And, again, I'll say the same thing that I said on Friday about the defense, too. It's almost like, all right, so here's two things. It's almost like the Packers are like, oh, we were in the Final Four. We're only a player away. No. Bullshit. You're not a player away. You're never a player away. And if you're staying the same, you're getting worse. And they didn't do a whole lot of free agency, okay? We talked about last week how teams ran the ball, the good offenses ran the ball on them at will. That bothers me. Okay, you never address that. You don't have a bad taste in your mouth about the way the 49ers could have ran for 500 yards in that game if they wanted. I mean, they just took their foot off the gas pedal because it was an ass whooping. Yeah,
2 games.
So right. Two games,
Two
right?
games, yeah.
So I don't understand it. And this is the question I pose to you, Paul. Do you think they draft Jordan Love, let alone trade up and give up other assets to go get a guy that's not going to do anything for their team for at least the next 3 years? Do you think that happens if there's an owner in the building in Green Bay? That's the thing that keeps coming back to my head.
I haven't thought about it that way. I mean, maybe that would have been the grown-up in the room to say, hey, you know what, guys? Jordan Love is a nice, 2024, that might look great out there at Lambeau Field. But what about the team that made it all the way to the NFC Championship and was clearly not on the same field, literally, figuratively, however you want to say it, with the San Francisco 49ers? And
right.
That's the issue that wasn't addressed.
Well, yes, that's the issue that was not addressed. And, I just feel like Green Bay, even though, yes, I know they were 13-3 and things were good, I also want to remind them, man, if it weren't for Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be a 10-6 or 9-7 team. I mean, we can go through a number of games where I just go, if Aaron Rodgers is in your quarterback, you don't win the game. I don't care what you say. They don't beat the Bears in week 1 unless it's Aaron Rodgers. They don't get off to the lead against the Dallas Cowboys and some of the amazing plays he made down there early in that game to win that. The Lions game, which was, I believe, a Monday night game. No way they win that without Aaron Rodgers. Chiefs was Aaron Rodgers' magic show, making like unbelievable rabbit out of his ass type throws in that football game. And then, of course, the playoff game. They're not in the NFC Championship game if it isn't for Aaron Rodgers just making throws where we go, man, there's only 2 or 3 other guys in the league that could do that. So that's where it bothers me. I like Aaron Rodgers, but I also am just bothered by the thought process of the Green Bay Packers in general, even without the Aaron Rodgers subject.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. On Friday, it was almost like a knee-jerk anger, and now 3 days later, it's more of a subdued, I can't believe that actually happened. I can't believe that team didn't get better at that position. There were some teams, and I'm looking at the AFC West, that made it a priority and went and accelerated after wide receivers. In the AFC West, those teams chasing the Kansas City Chiefs went after it. How do you feel about the Broncos going receiver in the first and the second round?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. Again, I think we would both agree the Broncos have a serious talent on defense. I mean, Vic Fangio is one of the best minds in the game. You got Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Jarrell Casey, a bunch of other kind of role player defensive linemen that are very good, that are kind of coming up the ranks, whether that be Shelby Harris or they got a kid from Ohio State they drafted a few years back who's a contributor. But, hey, Justin Simmons, one of the best safeties of the game, A.J. Bouye, Bradley Roby still there. So the defense is real. The thing was, okay, yeah, you got Noah Fant and Cortland Sutton. What else are we going to do? And they go out and get Jerry Jeudy, who can do it all and is really NFL ready, game ready right now, route runner, along with KJ Hamler. I mean, holy weaponry in Denver. I mean, Denver decided to just go, not just we're going to improve the offense, but damn, we're going to get like some real artillery here and be in the conversation for one of the most explosive offenses in football. And I think that's really cool.
And you also have the Raiders took 3 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds. And the Chargers, it didn't get as much attention However, 4 of their 6 picks were used on offensive skill positions. Clearly, those 3 other teams in the AFC West are chasing the offense and trying to keep up on the scoreboard with the Chiefs.
Well, yeah, I think there's something to that. And I think two of them, to what we said too, with like the Broncos and the Chargers, they really got their defense in place, right? So I think offense was a true area of need. I don't know if it was necessarily like, hey, let's just go out. Let's try to win shootouts against, Patrick Mahomes and company. I don't know if that's really realistic to even think that. But regardless, I think all 3 teams realize they're going to have to put more of an offensive output, because no matter how good your defense is, just like we saw in the Super Bowl, we saw a really awesome defense, and it just takes Mahomes and company to get, a little hot, and they can throw up 21 points in a hurry. So your offense at some point is going to have to answer those bells if you're playing against Kansas City all the time. You can't always just go, oh, we're the Chargers, our defense will get us through. Oh, Vic Fangio and the Broncos defense will get us through. No, I think, that maybe 50% of the time the defense can keep it at a manageable level, but I think you're going to go other games where Denver, you're going to be like, hey, Drew Lock, you're going to have to score 34 today. Hey, Justin Herbert or Derek Carr, we're going to have to score 30-something to win this game. They're hot today. They're going. So I understand the thought process, and, I thought the AFC West had a good draft just in general.
That's exactly the way it played out in December between the Chiefs and Broncos. I don't know the exact score, but the Broncos held the Chiefs well under their average, somewhere in the mid-20s. And all they had to score was a field goal. They didn't score a touchdown, they being the Denver Broncos the entire game. So that's not going to get it done. And the way they prioritized the early rounds really reflects that feeling. Let's move into the offensive line. 6 offensive tackles in round 1, only 1 in round 2. Not as many as expected interior offensive linemen drafted. Same drill that we did for wide receivers. Your favorite selection on the offensive line?
Okay. I mean, I'm in love with those first 3 offensive linemen off the board. I really am. And I wanted to give like the Jets and Mekhi Becton the title holder here, because I really like what Joe Douglas did. But I think ultimately, and I don't like to talk about these high picks all the time, but pick number 10 with Jedrick Wills, Alabama, to the Cleveland Browns. 1 is my favorite pick because that was my favorite tackle in the draft. But 2, Paul, I think you and I are on the same page. Like you brought it up with the Tennessee Titans on Friday. There was a plan. There's something about this is going to be our identity. They got Jack Conklin in free agency. They got a J.C. Treader and a Joel Bentonio inside to be great interior offensive linemen. They needed another tackle to help Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry and Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield. So to me, they went from having like, whoa, it's a good offensive line with Jack Conklin being signed, to now it's like, whoa, this offensive line, we better watch out for this. Let's put a little star next to the Cleveland Browns offensive line, because when all said and done, they might be in that conversation for one of the 5 best offensive lines of the game.
I like what the Saints did, too. I think they were the first team to go interior offensive line with Ruiz later in that first round. Not a sexy pick, but one that helps Drew Brees, for however much longer he's there, do what he does in the pocket.
Definitely, Paul. I mean, and again, make sure your strength stays your strength, right? The 49ers got Javon Kinlaw because they lost to Forrest Buckner, but we know the defensive line was the reason they got to the Super Bowl. The Saints, with some of their success, Paul, and it's a good call by you. I mean, their offensive line the last 3 years is without question one of the 5 best offensive lines in the game. I mean, they're amazing with Andrus Peat and Ramczyk and Armstead at left tackle. And now you get a center like Ruiz who can play center or guard, whatever you need to do here at first. I think ultimately he's really made for center, but I thought that was a really good pick too.
I like the way you put it too, because the 2 things that come to mind with draft philosophy, the ones we've heard for years and years, fill a need or take the best player available. Well, how about keeping a strength, just as you said it? And I think more and more when I look at picks, I go to that, and I applaud at home when I see teams do that, just like the Saints did there at 24 by going interior offensive line. Okay, we're warmed up now. We've got wide receivers. We've got offensive line off the board. Quarterbacks. We've got quarterbacks. 13 were selected. I'm ready to hear about any one of them that you count as your favorite pick.
Well, I love Joe Burrow. One, I mean, hey, of course. I mean, I don't want to be Captain Obvious. We know we love that. And we're going to have plenty of time to talk about him. Justin Herbert, I got a man crush on him too. I think the ones that jump out to me, the first one would be James Morgan, the Jets pick in the fourth round. That would probably be the guy that I liked a lot. Okay.
Now,
Just because,
that's a bit of a surprise. So we
yes.
need some details here. Details on how he got your attention.
Yes, well, he was, I had my top five quarterbacks, right? Where I had Tua number 3, Jordan Love 4. I had Eason from Washington 5. You see, he slipped in the draft, and the off the field reports on Jacob Eason are not flattering at all.
Right.
But that's really the biggest reason. I looked at James Morgan. To me, was that next group down of guys where I went, this guy has a chance. Again, I'm not into like mid-round and late-round picks where, oh, he's going to be good in the quarterback room. He'll know the playbook. Oh, he'll be able to He'll be able to break the huddle. Whoa, that's great. But then, like when you actually are getting paid to play or do something, he stinks or he's average. Morgan has a chance to be something, Paul. There is like a big-time arm here. And the Jets have a backup need. They have David Fales there, and I wouldn't trust that. Morgan has a chance to be one of those guys where, yes, a good backup, but also one of those guys 3-4 years from now, we go, hey, maybe James Morgan's a starting quarterback in the NFL. And that's where I like that pick at the quarterback position.
And I'm federally mandated to ask you about the 53rd overall pick. I'm also very curious to hear what you think about the Eagles in round 2 selecting Jalen Hurts.
Well, listen, I like a lot about Jalen Hurts. When people just talk about him, as a quarterback, I want to go, no, he's not a first or second round pick if you're just going to play him at the quarterback position. And this is not about the quarterback position for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they picked this guy for, yes, hopefully he can be our backup quarterback in 2 years, right? They got Nate Sudfeld right now. I think if Carson Wentz got hurt in week 3, Nate Sudfeld will be the guy that comes in. But they're going to use Jalen Hurts, in a Taysom Hill capacity. I think you're going to see him moved around, a slot receiver. He might line up to Carson Wentz as a running back in the backfield on some plays. Hey, here's a toss sweep, go. Here's a toss sweep. Now, don't run it. Throw a ball down the field. This is Doug Peterson, who we know is very creative and willing to think outside the box. He came from Andy Reid. So, I understand it that way. But I don't think this is any threat at the quarterback position by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Carson Wentz is borderline one of the 5 best in the sport. Jalen Hurts is a developmental prospect of the sport with added incentive of being a weapon for the offense.
You don't like him as a quarterback to come in and have a chance to beat out Carson Wentz. I don't either. But think about it this way, just as a second-round pick, late in the second round, to make your offense more difficult to defend, do you like the pick?
Nah.
Sort of?
I don't love it. It's sort of. I would have rather say, let's draft another receiver. I mean, they talked about Carson Wentz and giving him weapons. And I know they took Jalen Reagor in the first round, which, it's consensus. Nobody would have picked him at 21 except the Eagles. And he ran a slower 3-cone in 5.10.5 than I did. So I don't love that, all right? That to me is scary to take a guy like that at 21, let alone he's not a big guy either. So, yeah, I think there were some guys on the board still, that could have been had and certainly helped out that Philadelphia Eagle offense. But, again, I'm not going to be too critical. They have a plan usually in Philadelphia. They know what they're doing. Wasn't my favorite draft from Howie Roseman and company, but nonetheless, I know they're smart and it's well thought out.
Quickly, just because it's also a big name and he got a lot of attention over the weekend, Jake Fromm, round 5. What do you think?
Well, Jake Fromm is the perfect example of a guy that's been built up by, it's, one of my favorite sayings, qualifying statements by unqualified people. It's like the sideline reporter in a game was telling us when Jake Fromm was going to be drafted back in October. Like, I didn't know that sideline reporter was such a great draft eval and expert, So we've been fed that for like 5 months. And we're in this notion again in this country with football right now where if the team's good, the quarterback must be good, right? The quarterback's got to be one of the best in the Georgia. They don't ever lose. So the quarterback's, he's a winner. He's got to be amazing, I just hate that crap. He's a career backup. That's what he is. He's got a below average arm. He's a below average athlete. The accuracy is about average. So, again, we have to just get out of this mold of, oh my gosh, this team was good, so the quarterback must have been good too. No. Gino Torretta was nothing special. He was good in college and won the Heisman because his whole team was an NFL All-Pro team. Let me see, Ken Dorsey, he shouldn't even have been in the NFL, but he got in there because he was on a college all-star team. And then you can go into Matt Leinart and Tim Tebow and people that were overdrafted. And why were they overdrafted? Oh, that's right. They were on teams with NFL all-star teams as well. So, that bothers me. I'm sorry to rant about it. I can't help it sometimes.
It's fun. It's fun to bring up topics that get a response. And I saw Jake Fromm to Buffalo, and I thought it was interesting because it is windy as hell there. It's cold as hell there. It's wet there a lot. And it takes a really big, powerful thrower. I mean, it certainly helps to have those qualities. Look at Josh Allen. And he's such a different type of quarterback in terms of strengths than Josh Allen. It's a big difference when you line them up next to each other.
It is. It's a big difference. I'll say this. I think it's a good thought by the Buffalo Bills. I think it makes sense for them, for Jake Fromm and everything. I like the pick of the Bills taking Jake Fromm there. What was it, the end of the 5th round? I do.
It was in the 5th, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it makes sense. I'm more ranting on that, the round 2 and 3, and round 4 and 5. I mean, it was 40 minutes on the telecast every day, 50 minutes. I walked out of the room. I'm walking back in. Whoa, we're still talking about Jake Fromm. It's a commercial break. Hey, Jake Fromm's still on the board. That frustrated me, but it does make sense for Buffalo. Matt Barkley, he's the backup. You don't know. He might only be there for one more year. He probably will get replaced by a Jake Fromm who they'll have on a very manageable rookie contract. And, Fromm is experienced and has played. So from that standpoint, he does make sense as a backup quarterback.
Bills made a nice move in round 3, I thought, to go running back with Zach Moss. If you want to hit on that, we can. But this is how we open it up for running backs. Only 1 in the first round to the Chiefs. I know you love that pick. 5 win in round 2. Who's at the top of your list for the whole draft?
Well, I do like the Zach Moss pick. I do. But my favorite one is Jonathan Taylor to the Indianapolis Colts. I look at that. And then, again, this is another topic that bothers me because I hear a lot of people go, well, Marlon Mack ran for 1,000 yards last year. And Devin Singletary for the Buffalo Bills, rushed for 700 yards and looked good. Again, it's not about what the number says at the bottom line. It's about what was there to be had. And I saw so many runs last year with Marlon Mack where that was a 15-yard gain, but the top 10 running backs in football would have got 30 yards. So we can't always just go, oh, look at the yards, 1,000 yards. He's a starter. We don't need that. Jonathan Taylor's special. He's 230 pounds. He'll be one of the fastest running backs in football from get-go. If he sees a crack or a hole behind the blue wall of the Indianapolis Colts offensive line, I just think that's a great combination. They're creative in the run game, and I think that has a chance to be explosive this year.
I'm going to read 3 other big names at running back that went in round 2, and you tell me which one you like the most. DeAndre Swift, early in the 2nd to the Lions. Cam Akers, round 2 to the Rams. J.K. Dobbins, also 2nd round to the Ravens.
Ooh, I'm not crazy about DeAndre Swift to Detroit.
Right.
First off, they have Kerryon Johnson, who's like the same guy in a lot of ways as DeAndre Swift, except I just want to go, he's a better running back. So I didn't know there was a desperate need at the position there. All right, so I don't love the pick. I like DeAndre Swift. I love the J.K. Dobbins to the Baltimore Ravens. Like, great Scots Batman. Holy hell. I mean, you think about that big old line, and we're worried about Lamar Jackson on the edge, and J.K. Dobbins is a home run hitter. I mean, he's another one. If he sees a hole or a seam, it's going to be to the house. I mean, he's 70, 80-yard touchdowns. He's capable of that. So I love that. I like the Cam Akers pick, certainly. I like your Zach Moss thought, too. But I think my 2 favorite were Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, the Ravens getting Patrick Queen, the LSU linebacker, in round 1, and J.K. Dobbins in round 2. It's a tease for what might be coming up in top 5 favorite teams overall drafts. I have a feeling the Ravens just might show up on that list. Tight end, Chris, not a lot of action It started in round 2, the Bears going Cole Kmet, a guy we know very well out of Notre Dame. Who comes to mind there?
Yeah, well, I do love Cole Kmet. You know that. I mean, we've talked about him a lot over the last 6 weeks. We did a good video breakdown. I think you and I are in agreement that he's got a chance to be a special player. I think my favorite one, though, okay, well, just because of the combination of the team, and you've heard me talk about this player, is the little Devin Asiasi from UCLA. You know, I think you could make the argument he's every bit as talented, or not, if not more talented than Cole Kmet. Now, there's some off the field things I don't really know what it is. I know he transferred from Michigan and went to UCLA, and I don't know. There might be a few other things I'm not aware of. But either way, to go to a team who knows how to use the tight end position better than anybody we've ever seen in New England, and it was a desperate need for their football team, and they have a pocket passing young quarterback where it's very nice to have that big target over the middle of the field. That was my favorite tight end pick of this draft.
And the Patriots did it again. They took another tight end later in the draft. So they went there twice. Bill's got something in mind. The Saints taking Troutman out of Dayton. I kind of like that pick. I like them picking up Emmanuel Sanders, getting a talented tight end in the mid-rounds. And as we talked about, helping them out with the protection up the middle. So they had Drew in mind there, and I like what they did.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think, the great thing about what you're saying there to the Saints, Paul, and I think you make great points, it's they got Drew in mind, and then, oh, wait, when Drew's not there, these are great advantages to give a new young quarterback who comes in, whether that be Taysom Hill or whatever, to go, we can rely on the run game, we can rely on our tight end sets, and ease a quarterback into the way of the NFL that way too. So I think that's another positive for them.
That is the offense. Let's go to the other side of the football and begin with edge. It's the position that's most coveted in the first round. Only 2 win in the first. Young, second overall to the Redskins, and Chason 20 to the Jaguars. Edge position. Who's your favorite one?
Yeah, well, those 2 first rounders, I mean, they're hard not to love, as we both know. I mean, they're Greek gods. They're like physical freaks of I mean, they're unreal. So I do love them. But, okay. Terrell Lewis in round 3 from Alabama, who went to the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah. And again, Terrell Lewis, his grade is a first-round grade from just about anybody I've talked to through this process. He's got an injury history, so there's some risk there. Hurt his knee 2 years in a row, but, man, would it shock me if 3 years from now we're going, this is Jonathan Abraham from, the Jets and the Atlanta Falcons, that type of player? I love him as a potential superstar. I mean, I think at the very worst, he's going to be a really good football player, but I think that's the one that jumps out to me more than any, is the fact that the Rams, who have a very sneaky, talented, good D-line right now, anybody out there. I mean, holy crap. And then to add this freak to the mix, I mean, that could be some scary front seven with the Los Angeles Rams this year.
I thought it was interesting that it wasn't a super popular pick in the first round, but in rounds 2 and 3, where you expect to get a quality contributor, 10 came off the boards in those 2 rounds.
Yes. Well, there was a lot of quality football players, people we talked, the Seahawks with Darrell Taylor from Tennessee. I mean, grown man. I'll tell you another one that jumped out to me that I love. Pick 15 of the second round, Marlon Davidson, the 305-pound defensive end from Auburn, where I think he'll really end up moving in and being like an interior passer or interior defensive tackle type, but also has that type of ability out there. Man, I love that. And then the Jets and Joe freaking Douglas getting Jabari Zuninga, who was one of my favorites in the 3rd round, Paul. I think these are guys that have a chance to be, they were middle round picks or whatever, but they have superstar potential. And I'm excited to see if they can, reach that potential.
Another tease there, Chris, because I don't know what your top 5 looks like, but Joe Douglas and the Jets are going to have a home there in my 1 through 5 as we get closer to the end of our show here. Okay, cornerback. It started at 3, Okudah to the Lions, all the way to Gladney at 31 to the Vikings in that trade, but 6 win in round 1. As expected, it was the most popular position, rounds 1 through 7. You have all kinds of ways to go that you can go here with corners. Who's your favorite?
Well, again, I think there's two that kind of separate themselves for me. Again, with value, we're talking. Yes, I love the top three corners. I thought I was going to be talking about the Raiders corner, Damon Arnett, as one of these guys that are like, man, they got some player in the second round. I don't love it as much at pick 19. I thought we'd be talking about him, but I think the first one is Kristian Fulton to the Tennessee Titans at the end of the second round. I think you talk to some people. I know I love this kid in the draft process. He's a true island corner. This is a defense that struggled in pass defense last year, and I think he has some nickel and outside versatility wherever they need him to play here in year one. I think they'll be fine. That was probably my favorite cornerback pick, as far as value is concerned too.
When I was looking at the second round, Chris, and going back to your list of top five corners and thinking about the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago about the best available in the draft, I'm not surprised you went Fulton. I thought you might go 10 before. At 51, the Cowboys found Trayvon Diggs.
That was going to be my next one. That's my honorable mention. Yes, they lost Byron Jones, and now, whoa, you get another starting outside corner in round two. I think a lot of people in football had him somewhere between 25 and 40 in the draft. He ends up out of the first round, but size, unbelievable strength and jam at the line of scrimmage. And then, Paul, I know we talked about this. He's Stephon Diggs' brother, and he's got the best ball skills in the draft out of the cornerback position. He's great in zone. He really has a feel for what the offense is trying to do, and he knows how to read the quarterback's eyes. And I'm telling you, if he gets a hand on the ball, he's going to catch it. He's like his brother that way. So, yes, the Cowboys absolutely killed it with that pick right there.
When you think about the safety position, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, who comes to mind?
Damn, all my man crushes went off on day two. So, I couldn't believe it. But I think, number one, I'm going to my Buccaneers with getting Antoine Winfield Jr. I mean, I love Antoine Winfield Jr. He was arguably one of my favorite players in the draft. So the fact that they got him at pick 44 or 45, I think it was total, and they need that position badly. Yes, that to me would be probably my favorite one, with my man from Lenoir-Rhyne, Kyler Duggar at New England Patriots being my second favorite.
I wanted to ask you about that because, Bill Belichick laid out the perfect question for someone like me to ask you. So at 37, Bill Belichick says, okay, safety. Could have had Grant Delpit. Could have had Antoine Winfield. Could have had Jeremy Chin, a prospect we both like a lot out of Southern Illinois. What do you think about him going with Duggar instead of those three guys?
Well, I had Duggar as one of my top five safeties in the draft. I put him number 4 only because I was chicken crap, Paul, because I just went, damn, I'm not sure about the level of competition. This is one of those guys that you'd really like to see in person a little bit, just to go, okay, he looks like a giant in that type of football and looks really gifted, but is it because of the lack of competition he's playing against, or is this real? It looked very real on film to me. I mean, one of the things I wrote down was his ceiling is Sean Taylor-ish. I mean, he's got some body to be that size and be able to move the way he moves. It's warranted of a top 40 pick. And we know New England likes those kind of guys, right? Oh, you're going to play Travis Kelce in the playoffs? You got Duggar to cover him. He's going to be great linebacker, strong safety, be able to match up with big receivers or big tight ends and be a pain in the ass for them. That's where the true beauty of this pick is for New England.
Are you down on the wide receivers at Limestone? They didn't show you much on tape?
Yeah, I'm a little down on them. I wasn't sure. I thought some of them I might be able to beat them in a race, so I wasn't sure about that.
Defensive tackle. It was fun listening to your podcast that you did with Ahmed because I could tell how much you love both of the top two guys. Brown, he goes in the top 10 to Carolina. Kinlaw, you talked about him a little bit. He's now in San Francisco. But you can have one of those two if you'd like to talk about here with this topic. But I give you all the defensive tackles that win in the draft. Who's your favorite?
Yeah, well, I mean, those top two are special. I mean, there's no denying that. I think you probably saw enough even this weekend just in the highlights to go, who the hell are these guys? Are unbelievable. I mean, just to be that size and move the way they move, unbelievable. All right, there's two that jump out. My first one is Neville Gallimore from Oklahoma. The fact that the Dallas Cowboys got him in round 3, I had some arguments about this guy with some friends of mine in the NFL, Paul, like some true arguments. Because, one, I think he was the best interior pass rusher in the draft, other than the top 2 guys that we saw, right? Mm-hmm. So he's special that way. And I know I had some defensive coach friends and people they really docked him because, what I would say was more scheme-related stuff from Oklahoma rather than evaluating the player. Oklahoma loves to do stunts and slants. And, hey, you're in this gap, but we want you to run full speed 2 gaps over and be the one that stops that gap. Well, that's nice, but, people when you're running over there, are blocking down or pulling or pushing you. And you can't always just stop in the gap with a 310-pound guy on your back as you've ran there full speed. Like, nobody can do that. I don't think the Hulk can do that. I'm not sure. I'd have to check. Okay? So that bothers me in the evaluation. But to me, to get this damn guy in the interior, the Dallas Cowboys, where they just got freaks galore on their defense already, that was the one I loved the most. Yeah.
Am I remembering this correctly? In our mock draft, you had him in the first round, right?
I did. I had the Seattle Seahawks taking him late in the first round. And that's where it kind of got me, I got into Saturday and we got in the second round and I started texting some friends around the NFL like, hey, dude, what's up with Neville Gallimore? Is there something I don't know about him? You know me, Paul. I put myself out there always. I thought he was a first-round pick, blah, blah, blah. I got a lot of people going, he's got first-round traits. He's got first-round talent. And then I kind of got into the defensive coach I text with a lot who was a little bit like, he's not great at gap integrity and keeping his gap. And that's where I kind of got in that text message feud there. But, we'll see. Only time will tell whether I'll be right or nameless defensive coach will be right.
And we'll find out if this feeling that I have that the Cowboys had great value in rounds 1, 2, and 3 with positions they needed and where they found guys as opposed to where we had them ranked. I'm anxious to see if it plays out the next few years the way I think it is, and that's the Cowboys had a pretty good draft.
Definitely.
We have one position left, linebacker. I told you on Friday how much I love Patrick Queen going to the Ravens late in the first, so you can have any one of these guys as the one who comes to mind first, who counts as your favorite. What's the name?
I'm going to go with a first-rounder here, and I love your Patrick Queen. I'm with you. I just want this to get a little more love. And, I love the Kenneth Murray pick by the Los Angeles Chargers. One, I'm going to give it some extra value because they get a quarterback with pick number 6, but then make a big-time move to trade back up into the first round, I believe with the Patriots at the time, and get a difference-making player for your defense to where now I go, whoa, like, watch out for this defense this year. Like, I was already going, like, the Chargers defense could be one of the best in football. Now I'm going, whoa, it will be one of the best in football. It's just going to be, is it the best or the second best or the third best? I mean, that's really what it's come down to me.
Wow.
But Murray, Murray to be 242 and move the way he does. And the biggest thing to me, Paul, and I'm always scared of Big 12 linebackers because it's a 7-on-7 conference. This guy, he's an SEC mentality. He liked getting in the nitty-gritty and, pulling guards, let me smash you. And, I'll fill this gap and take on the fullback or do whatever he's got to do. He's got a true physicality to his game. This is not just some pretty athlete running around. And I think in that scheme, that's the Seattle Seahawks scheme there. This is going to be their Bobby Wagner. And, man, when you just look at that Chargers defense with those 2 pass rushers and Linval Joseph on the inside, and Jerry Tillery, who was a first-round pick last year. And now the second level, you start talking about Kenneth Murray and Derwin James, who's their version of Cam Chancellor. You just go, holy defense, Los Angeles, and that excites me.
A quiet part of that excitement, I think, when I look at that Chargers defense, he doesn't get a lot of credit. Not a real well-known name, but Drew Tranquill out of Notre Dame, a mid-round pick last year, had a nice rookie season. Maybe not going to be a star, but you put him next to Murray, and I think that makes Murray even better.
I do too. I mean, we've gotten to see Tranquill so much in person. He does everything well. He understands the game. They'll find whether he's the starting linebacker in the base defense. Hey, I don't know, but he's going to have plenty of snaps because of his versatility and his ability to match up in certain personnel sets with the opposing offense. And then Paul, I mean, we get into Casey Hayward, Chris Harris Jr., pretty good safety play there in the Chargers. I mean, they're just one of those teams I look at right now and go, damn, that AFC West, holy talent out there. It's really impressive.
Right. I like where you went there because you not only like the player, but you tied it all together with the other levels of the defense and how he fits in and how he makes a budding strength of a team with really nice young players, how he makes them probably even better or hopefully even better if you're Tom Telesco. Right. So that brings us very well into the top 5 teams because maybe the Chargers will show up in your top 5. But we're going to go 1 through 5. You get your favorite. I'll point out my favorite. We'll just ping pong it back and forth until we get all the way to 5. So I can tell you're enthusiastic about what a number of GMs did. So this probably wasn't easy for you to pick your favorite one. But who makes it at the top of the list?
Well, number 1, I'm going to go to Baltimore. I think anytime you start going through this draft and you start going, whoa, it looks like they hit on 3 players. And then when you start, if you hit on 3 players in the draft, and again, I know we'll see how this all plays out. But just where I say hit, I mean guys that I saw like special talents, and now with the scheme and team itself, it's the right fit. That's what I mean by hitting on a draft pick. And when you see 3 in one draft, you go, that team had a good draft. When you start to see 4 and 5, you go, holy cow, they killed it. And Baltimore killed it to me. I mean, the fact that you talked about Patrick Queen, the linebacker from LSU, I mean, he's got Baltimore written on his forehead. He's the perfect fit. J.K. Dobbins, I mean, arguably the best home run hitting running back in the draft to go with the unbelievable O-line and that quarterback. Madubuike, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M. I mean, Baltimore, nobody is better at collecting the biggest, baddest dudes on the planet than Baltimore on a yearly basis. Right. It's unbelievable. And then get one of my receivers from Devin Duvernay from Texas, who's built like a running back, and he's going to be tough over the middle and speed sweeps and things like that. He ran 4.39, so now you got him and Hollywood Brown on the field. And then Malik Harrison, who I love, a thumping middle linebacker at the end of round 3. Round 3, the Ravens killed it. They got 3 guys that will really contribute to their football team right off the bat. So I got to give Eric DeCosta and the rest of the Ravens organization a standing ovation for what they did once again.
And even if you stop right there, just with the picks you talked about, it's worthy of being number 1. It makes perfect sense. You didn't even get to the guards in rounds 3 and rounds 4. And Marshall Yanda retires, so it's like Baltimore just gets it. They not only end up with talented, productive players from Ohio State and LSU in rounds 1 and 2. Then, somebody raises their hand, probably Eric DeCosta, and says, you know what? We lost a future Hall of Fame guard. Let's get a couple. One of them probably can play. We'll plug them in there. They get 1 in round 3 and 1 in round 4.
Well, you're exactly right. And they have a special eye for offensive talent. I mean, there's a reason for it seems like for the last 10 or 11 years, we're going, Baltimore's got one of the biggest, most powerful offensive lines in football. Yeah, because they're just one of those teams like Mike Zimmer with DBs or, the Pittsburgh Steelers with wide receiver or Andy Reid with offensive linemen. Baltimore the same way. It's like they got a tree in the back that's like just growing big the offensive line. And they're like, yeah, we'll take him, plug him off. We need him. And yes, specifically the kid from Mississippi State, Tyree Phillips, he's got a chance. He does. He's got Baltimore written all over him. Road grader, tough, powerful, just needs to be coached, was in a raw offense in Mississippi State. But yes, I did like that pick a lot.
And you mentioned Duvernay, the wide receiver from Texas. They also in round 6 took a wide out from SMU. And maybe the same mentality with the guards. Hey, we'll take 2, maybe 1 turns out it can play. If one of those 2 wide receivers can be a nice quality part of the rotation for Lamar Jackson, I just like that they, even though he was the MVP last year and deserved it, they want him to be better. And if they could find 1 young receiver to be part of that rotation, maybe the 3rd or 4th guy, then it was a nice draft that way. So just all the way around, it's easy to stand back and say, nice job, Eric DeCosta.
It's killer. It's killer. With those tight ends, that run game, J.K. Dobbins, the offensive line, Hollywood Brown, and I really think Duvernay can be like almost a Deebo Samuel-ish type player. a lot of balls over the middle, fearless that way. Here's a speed sweep. Here's a reverse. So, yeah, Paul, to your point, which you made back on Friday, Baltimore always has a plan. They know what they're trying to build as a football team. They don't ever seem to vary away from that. And that's why they're usually one of the cream of the crop teams in the NFL.
My number one team is also in the AFC. It's the Indianapolis Colts. And I apologize if they're going to show up on your list 2 through 5. I might step on you here a little bit. But follow me here. I mean, taking a step back from just the draft, when you look at the offseason roster cutting, roster adding, all the things you do to put that puzzle together, all with the idea in mind, we're going to be harder to beat next year than we were last year. And how can we do that? So number one, they get Phillip Rivers, a big-time upgrade at the quarterback spot. So you already have that. They're starting out maybe in the B or A range. So then they trade the number 13 pick for DeForest Buckner. So people may get excited or upset. Oh, we don't have the 13th overall pick. You've got DeForest Buckner. So before they even get to the draft, they've got Rivers, they've got Buckner. In round 2, they got my favorite wide receiver in the draft in Michael Pittman, and they also get Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Wisconsin that you talked about. So if you're looking at ways, or if you look at the draft the way I do, that are we tougher to beat than we were a year ago? I think the Indianapolis Colts, through pre-draft moves and then their draft moves, I think they did it better than every other team.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. I mean, Chris Ballard he's a genius. I mean, there is no denying that Chris Ballard's one of the best GMs in the NFL. And, I mean, you're right, Paul. DeForest Buckner counts as part of the draft. I mean, that was their 13th pick.
Yeah.
That's what they got. Right, exactly right. And I'll one-up you with what you said about them. They got one of my favorite safeties in Julian Blackmon in round 3. They need safety help there in Indianapolis, and I really love the kid. I thought he was like a Rodney McLeod, Sean Davis type talent, extremely athletic ex-corner. And then even to take the flyer on the quarterback, not a flyer, but to get Jacob Eason, again, I think this will be Jacoby Brissett's last year with the Colts. Maybe it goes on longer. I don't know. But you take a guy like Jacob Eason who has big-time talent and a big-time arm to where, hey, we'll see how it goes. Maybe this guy's our starting quarterback 2 years from now. And I think that's a good thought as well. So I'm with you. The Colts, I thought, they didn't make my top 5, Paul, but they were on my list of about 8 or 9 that I wrote down.
Did you see, it was kind of deep in Peter King's Football Morning in America article this morning. He talked about Blackmon, and he shared, somehow he got a hold of it, a letter that he wrote maybe in grade school about how he wanted to play in the NFL more than anything else, and just about if he worked hard, maybe he could get there. If he did what the coaches told him to do, maybe he could get there. And it's just such a fun concept that the kids dream about this, and then they get that call. And I forget about that sometimes when I'm putting fit with talent and all that. And to see that line and to think about how his parents must feel seeing that, it's a pretty cool thing.
No, it's a really cool thing. I mean, dreams came true for a lot of kids. And
right?
Blackmon's a guy who was a corner at Utah, had a little injury, and then they moved him to safety. And Paul, like no joke, was one of my favorite watches in the draft. The way he can run around. Yeah, I mean, he throws his body around for a 190-pound guy, too. Somebody's got to tell him he's only 190. He thinks he's 245, but I like him a lot. I think he will help out their football team.
Okay, so I have the Colts as my favorite draft class. You have the Ravens as your favorite. Who do you have at the second spot?
I'm going to go number 2, okay? A little biased here, but I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers, all right?
Okay.
I am, because of not necessarily the depth of their draft, but again, I think we have to look at what they made happen and the holes they filled. And I'm including Trent Williams in this evaluation because they traded away draft picks to get the best tackle in football when he's playing and healthy and all greased up and ready to go. But then also to get DeForest Buckner replacement and Javon Kinlaw, at pick 14, they traded down one spot from 13 to 14 and swapped with the Bucs. I look at that, Trent Williams, and then Shanahan gets one of his favorite receivers in the draft in Brandon Ayuk, who I know he looks at as being like Isaac Bruce. And they were 3 desperate needs for this football team. I mean, they needed to be addressed in a big way. So that, to me, even though it wasn't a lot of picks, they crushed it with three different players that really filled some major holes on their roster, and not just like filled them. I think filled them in extraordinary fashion with big time talent.
Think about volume also with the 49ers, and they didn't have much. I think only 5
No,
total picks. Did that hold you back at all? Did you hesitate there about making them second?
it did. It did. I did not really want to pick the 49ers, but then when I just thought, man, Kinlaw was a top 5 talent to me. Ayuk was certainly a first round receiver, and maybe I'm not as high on him as my friend Kyle Shanahan is, but I bow to Kyle when it comes to receivers. He's got an incredible eye for talent there. And then to pull off a Trent Williams trade for just the 3rd and a 5th round pick, when, also I'm adding this in, Joe Staley, obviously they knew he was going to retire. Obviously, they kept Joe Staley to keep it quiet this whole time because as soon as they signed Trent Williams, he released that he was retiring.
Yes,
so
yeah.
that to me goes into the draft process and keeping tight-lipped and not telling people and all that too. So yeah, maybe I'm a little high on them. I'm a little biased here, but I think it's just 3 home run hitters they got to fill. I mean, it's a Super Bowl team that has got richer this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, to my point about the Colts, I mean, are the 49ers more difficult to defend than they were a year ago? And they were the second best team. And I think, yes, I think that on paper, it looks like they have made that improvement. My second team, Chris, I'm going with the New York Jets and Joe Douglas's first draft there. And I'm going to point mainly at the first 2 picks and see, hopefully I can explain this the right way. So I don't know Joe Douglas. I'm picturing, though, after looking at what he did, he had a thought going in. I want to get a starting offensive tackle. I want to get a starting wide receiver with my first 2 picks. And what's one thing that we talked about the last 6 weeks, that this wide receiver class, because it was so good in rounds 2 and 3, might cause a GM to resist temptation in the first round and try and come back and get some of that quality later. And I think Joe Douglas did a perfect job of that because at number 11, there wasn't a wide receiver off the board. He could have had any wide receiver he wanted. And with that need, I'm sure he was tempted. But looking ahead to this 59th pick, he probably thought, okay, I also want a starting offensive tackle. Am I going to get a starting OT there with the 59th pick? Probably not. I can probably get one. Better chance I'll get one in the second round at wide receiver. So he goes Becton, the giant offensive tackle with Louisville. Nice pick. I can see why he liked him. Came back at 59, and the 13th best wide receiver, the 13th one off the board, was Mims. We'll see if he can be a starter, but I think he manipulated the draft and knowledge and knew exactly what he could get in round 2 and resisted temptation in round 1 to get 2 positions that he had to have for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, agreed. And just so I'll just continue. That's my number 3 team, just so we go. So you made them 2. I'm making them number 3. I mean, the Jets are full of some of my Robin Hood picks. They really are. Give it. Take it from the rich and give it to the poor. Okay. They. First off, you hit the top 2. Denzel Mims has a chance to be a superstar. I mean, he does. I think he plays to his 4.3 speed that we on film. It sounds like he played last year with a broken hand, so that affected things. But to get Ashton Davis in round 3, they need the safety help. I don't think Marcus May is, got a warm, cozy spot on that roster in New York. So I think he could be the replacement there. Jabari Zuninga, who we talked about earlier already, to get him later on in the 3rd round. For a team that has a desperate need for pass rushing skill, this guy could be something. He's got a chance. LaMichael Perrine, the running back from Florida, I really liked him. You're going to see him get some carries this year. And then in round 4 to get the quarterback that we already talked about and James Morgan, that was the right. You got Sam Darnold. You're good. I understand. They got David Fales as their other backup. They needed to address that. I think it's very scary to go into the season with David Fales as your backup. Morgan's got big-time talent, and you might be able to turn him into something before all's said and done, and you got him in the 4th round. So I love the Jets draft. I'm with you, Paul, all the way.
You know what I love, Chris, is the accidental producing that comes in. I have the Jets at 2, brings you right into 3. You can fill in some of the blanks and get with more detail. So that worked out well. My team at 3 might also show up for you at 4 or 5. We shall see. But I have the Buffalo Bills at number 3. And even though they waited till the 2nd round to get A.J. Epinesa, I mean, that's great value. And every year There's somebody who runs a slower time at the combine they should have. They're a little shorter than they should have been, and it causes them to go in round 2. I think Epinesa is that guy. So you start right there. But then I go back to the view from 10,000 feet that I'm sure they had in that building after last year. They thought Josh Allen was pretty good, as they should have. A lot more good than bad his first year, but they know he has to be better. If they're going to be good, if they're going to go from nice playoff team to threat to be around late January, he's got to make a couple giant leaps in the next 2 and 3 years. So they get Stephon Diggs. They make that trade happen. I know it's not part of the draft, but I count it as part of the offseason upgrade. And then they get the running back we talked about in round 3, Zach Moss, a nice compliment to Singletary. He can also directly help Josh Allen. And Gabriel Davis, I don't know him well. I know he was highly productive in college. I just like the execution of a plan that I can see them saying, Josh Allen's got to be a little better or a lot better than he was this year. We're going to put some people around him to help. And that's exactly what they did with the free agency and the trade and also early in the draft.
Yeah, they did. And you're okay to add Stephon Diggs to that. I mean, you're right. They traded away a first-round pick, so that's part of their draft. I mean, that's what they used it for. And I'm with you there. And Buffalo, it was. They're not going to make my top 5, Paul, but damn, they were really close. I mean, they were one of those teams that I was going, damn, I love this draft. You're right. Epinesa, he's perfect for Buffalo. Man, does Buffalo have some defensive line and front 7, not only just the starters, the depth is phenomenal. You hit on Zach Moss. I think he's made for that offense. I really do. He's a between the tackles, extraordinaire. He's so quick. He's so explosive to the hole. He will run you over. I mean, I think that they needed a true bell cow type tailback because now they can use Devin Singletary as their James White, Deion Lewis because they run the New England offense. You mentioned Gabriel Davis. He's great on the outside, 50-50 ball, go balls. Will fit Justin, perfectly with Josh Allen and his skill set. And hey, even in round 5 with Jake Fromm, I understand the thought process there of a good backup quarterback for your young quarterback for years to come. So I'm a huge fan of McDermott and Brandon Beane. Again, it goes back to one of the themes we've talked about this whole podcast. They always have a plan. They know what they're trying to do there in Buffalo, and they understand the team they're trying to build, and they never deviate from that, and I respect that greatly.
So with all the nice pieces on Josh Allen, I was going to say Josh Allen isn't going to overthrow the intermediate routes by 10 yards now this year, right?
Hopefully not. We'll see. We'll see. Definitely something he needs to work on, but he did show improvement in that last year. And of course, I do think he's got the talent to get better at it.
All right.
My number 4, I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys. I am. I know we mentioned them earlier. All right. I probably could have made this team a little higher. It was really hard for me actually in this. But when you get CeeDee Lamb at 17, your starting corner at 51 in Diggs, what I think is going to be a starting defensive tackle and game wrecker in Neville Gallimore in round 3, along with the center from Wisconsin, who I don't know a great deal about. I watched him a little bit, and not that they need this guy to start right now, but I saw enough to know, this guy has a chance to be a starter for the Dallas Cowboys in the next 2 to 3 years, or at least help out in the interior part of the offensive line in general. I really like what Dallas did. And even the round 5 pick, Bradley Anae, who I thought was one of the better pass rushers out of Utah. Needs some help in the run game, but if you're in 3rd and 10, watch for this guy on the edge. He's slippery. He's got a lot of different moves, and he's a sack machine. So I really liked what the Cowboys did. Jones family has a great eye for talent, in my opinion.
Yes, and this is some more crossover with our selections here, but I'm going to show you. I have Dallas with a 4 next to them as well. So
love it.
You hit it well, and I would only say to sum it up, you knew the Cowboys coming in would like to have a starting wide receiver. They would like to have a starting corner. And what if you can get CeeDee Lamb at 17? What if you can get Trayvon Diggs at 51? So your details there were very good, but just what they did in rounds 1 or 2 in terms of what they had to have this year, you have to applaud.
Killed it. Killed it. That offense now, they went from whoa, this was the number 1 offense in football last year. Am I correct about that? They certainly, yes, they were the number 1 offense in football, and you add CeeDee Lamb to the mix?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. They're going to be almost indefensible this year. So, yeah, good for them. They killed it. Cowboys, as we know, they got talent on that football team. All right, my number 5 goes to the the new group, the new guys on the block, the Carolina Panthers. All right, I'm going to give the Carolina Panthers some love here. You know, first off, we probably haven't talked about Derek Brown enough, the number 7 pick. I mean, franchise interior defensive tackle. I said on Twitter on Thursday night, he's really just a bigger version of Warren Sapp. I think he's that special of a player. All right, but then to get Yetur Gross-Matos in round 2, again, here's a team that had a theme about size, length, physicality. They were going to stick to it. Jeremy Chin, who has a chance to be a superstar safety out of Southern Illinois. Troy Pride, who we saw at Notre Dame as a nickelback. I think perfect fit as a nickelback for the Carolina Panthers, ran like a 4.3. So I just look at them and go, there's a theme. They know what they wanted. Their offense did a very good job in free agency, and it has a lot of talent to begin with. It was the defense that needed some name recognition, some game wreckers, some difference makers, and I think they addressed that through this draft.
We got to quit hanging out because I have the Carolina Panthers at number 5 as well. So
I could tell by your reaction that I thought we might have been.
I actually thought it was going to happen with our first 3 picks. So I'm glad we made it 1, 2, 3 without too much crossover. But Carolina, for all the reasons you mentioned, and just to have the balls to go with all 7 picks on one side of the ball. I mean, that's not something you see very often. I can't wait to see how they use Jeremy Chin. He was one of my favorite prospects to get to know in this class. I mean, how much safety is he going to play? How much a hybrid outside linebacker is he going to play? So you get Matt Rule, known for the offense that he had in college, and they go all 7 defensive picks. That one stood out to me in terms of novelty and also the names that they're going to have to plug in there.
No doubt. And, you know, Matt Rule, I think we saw. Now, this is a guy that's very good friends with Bill Parcells, all right? And if you're friends with Bill Parcells and you're from that school of thought, size is important to those people. I mean, Bill Parcells with my dad's teams and the Giants in the 80s, early 90s, no one would argue the Giants were one of those teams we talk about, an all-bar team. If a bar fight broke out, the Giants were going to be in the final 2 or 3 teams in the NFL. They were full of big people. My dad's come on the podcast before where he's heard Bill Parcells, they're not sure to keep player A or player B, and he would literally just say, it's really close. Let's just keep the bigger. Let's keep the big dude out there. We'll just keep him in a tie. And Matt Rule showed that, with the defensive tackle, the defensive end, Jeremy Chin, to your point, long safety, linebacker. I don't know what the hell he is, but he obviously believes in size and length with some of the acquisitions he made in free agency and in this draft. So he's got a clue, Matt Rule. I've heard nothing but good things about him. He certainly has an eye for talent and knows, I think, how to build a program or an NFL football team.
You're talking about Bill Parcells and the old Giants, Chris, reminded me of back in 1992. How old were you in 92?
I was 12.
You were 12. So you were very familiar with this team. You knew all these guys. But we played in the old Kickoff Classic, which, if you remember, was always the first game of the year.
Sure.
And it was,
Did you
it
play
was at
USC
the old
that
Meadowlands.
year?
We played NC State.
NC State, okay.
We played NC State. So we get out there a couple days before. It's kind of like a little mini bowl game. And we pulled up to the old Meadowlands Stadium, drive underneath there. First of all, your dad drives by real slowly in a black Mercedes and like, oh, it's Phil Simms. It's Phil Simms. Actually, it was a Mercedes. And he didn't really stop.
It might have been a Jaguar.
Are
you sure it was a Mercedes or was it a Jaguar? I'm not sure.
I feel like it was a Mercedes. But after Phil drove by, and he was all dressed up. He had some place to go after practice. But I remember walking right by Leonard Marshall and thinking, and he was a D tackle. I'm like, I've not seen a chest and arms and ass like that ever. I don't know if I want to make it to the NFL if the league is full of guys like that. That's right where my mind went when you talked about the kind of players that Rule probably likes based off his relationship with Bill Parcells.
No doubt about that. They're size believers. Yeah, you talk about an 86 Giants defense or 1990 Super Bowl defense, but you talk about Lawrence Taylor and Jim Byrd and Leonard Marshall and Harry Carson and Carl Banks, a lot of big dudes, linebackers that are 255 pounds and 260 pounds, let alone defensive tackles and defensive ends that were 290, 300 pounds. So, yeah, they had some ass kickers for sure. And, hey, there's still some teams. We see the Baltimore Ravens. They're that way. They believe in size. They're going to try to beat you up physically that way. You know, the New England Patriots are still big believers. Of course, with Bill Belichick, the same way. So it is always an interesting discussion between, do you believe in size and beating a team up physically, or do you believe in like speed and creating chaos out on the football field? You can win either way, and there's plenty of examples of either way. I tend to lean on the size side,
Yes.
but certainly, you know, have been on some teams. In Tampa, we were a speed team, and you can win that way. I prefer size.
Your dad playing for Bill Parcells is the reason you're a legs and ass guy, Chris. I just put it together.
Without a doubt, I am. Yes, I mean the quarterbacks had to squat. They had to get legs and ass to be on that New York Giants team. Let alone he was, you know, being taught how to look at players through Bill Parcells' eyes. So yeah, it was a good one, but it was a good draft, Paul. I think we hit a lot today. It was awesome stuff. Good by you as always. Great conversation. And we'll be back. I'm not even sure what day I'm coming back for the podcast. Yeah. It might be Wednesday, might be Thursday. I haven't got that yet, but we will have another podcast this week where we're going to break down more of what was going on in the draft. We might hit on some other details we've missed. And, of course, news and notes and everything else that's going on throughout the NFL. Pete Dibalitalitis just said it's Thursday. We'll be doing the podcast. But, Paul, you the man, homie. Be good.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks for everything. All right, dude.
See you soon.
Peace out. All right. Peace out, everybody.
Yo, what's up? Come on, man. Subscribe on YouTube to Chris Sims Unbuttoned Podcast. I need you. Please hit the subscribe button, please.